Mr. Speaker, and I'm rising tonight. I think I'm the last speaker in this session of Parliament for this summer until we take a break, and it's my pleasure to be serving here for the constituents of Calgary Centre, and I hope I've represented what I said I would represent in this House to them, and if I've let them down in anything I've done in this House or anything I've said in this House or anything I've done publicly, I apologize to them for that. I hope to represent them well on all these things in the highest regard for this House. But let me take 10 minutes here. I know this is going to be as concise as I can make it as far as where we're going in the financial future of this country. So we need to link here exactly what's happening with the government. It's about truth and consequences. And the truth, of course, is that we're running bigger and bigger deficits. Our debt is getting higher and higher. There are consequences to this going forward. And those consequences are going to be borne not by the government in power here, but by the Canadian people who are going to continue to face mounting debts, deficits, interest payments, and household debts going forward here. 3 months ago, we had a Liberal finance minister deliver a budget. And in that budget, there was a lot that she put in front of Parliament here, including another $40+ billion deficit, adding to Canada's debt, which has now reached $1.3 trillion. That's the federal government debt only. Layer on the provincial government debt on top of that, of all the combined provincial governments, and you've got another $900 billion on top of that. So we are talking about a society that, from a government perspective, is very much in debt. And of course, the government, in its fiscal wisdom, says that the provincial governments are starting to actually get more money. There is one provincial government that received money last year, and that was my home province of Alberta, because of a boom in oil prices, which led to a whole bunch of royalties, which translated into over $21 billion being forwarded to various governments across Canada as a result of a prosperous industry. So make sure we understand what's happening here, and it is an industry that did suffer for a number of years before it actually made any profit here. This is the economic basis of what's holding up the social welfare of this country at this point in time. But I'm going to go back to what the finance minister's speech here gave. Federal debt, provincial debt, but she also is facing a point in that an inflation regime at that point in time, which is around 4%. It had come down from last summer from about 8.2% to 4%. And how did that happen? That happened because the Bank of Canada, an instrument of the Government of Canada, had raised interest rates from 0.25% to 4.5%. It had done its job in actually trying to control inflation. This is the mandate of the Bank of Canada. So it performed that mandate, but it had to perform that mandate because of government overspending. So it did what it had to do to bring that rate back down. It got down to 4%. What happened in April? Well, consumer price index went back up. Inflation in Canada's economy went back up. Why did it go back up in April? Because the government imposed a 30% increase on the carbon tax upon the backs of Canadians. So, of course, that rippled all the way through the economy and caused inflation. Inflation at the pumps, inflation at the food store, inflation in everything we do that involves energy. Now, this is something the government doesn't seem to get a hold of, is that if it increases the cost in the economy, it's going to increase inflation. So it's doing this two ways. It's increasing the costs to Canadians, and it's increasing deficits. These are all monetary mechanisms, fiscal mechanisms, that increase inflation. And it asks the Bank of Canada, of course, can you come in and fix our mess for us, because we are imposing more costs upon Canadians. And 4.5% back when this was the Bank of Canada rate when the minister delivered her budget. That went up last month, this month actually, June 7th, to 4.75%. So what was declining in both respects has gone up. The cost of inflation has gone up, and the cost to Canadians has gone up again, because they're all refinancing their mortgages, and it's another 0.25%. Where will this end? We don't know at this point in time. It's costing Canadians more and more and more. Well, what's the principal cause of this inflation? The number one cause of inflation in the economy is money printing. This government continues to print money. It's doubled Canada's debt in 8 years. And it's going to say that we had to do that to keep people safe during the pandemic. Well, the pandemic's over, my friends on the other side. We have to get back to some sort of balance where we're actually paying for the goods we consume in society today with today's dollars. We keep taxing the future generation of Canadians on their taxes to pay for our spending today. And that's something that has to change. That's something my party's asking this government to change, because it's a necessity for the future of this country. Now, let me talk about the recipe for inflation that this government has imposed upon this country at this point in time, and ask the Bank of Canada, of course, come in and fix our mistakes again and again and again. What are the consequences of the Bank of Canada coming in and raising the interest rates throughout the economy? Well, higher mortgage rates. Higher mortgage rates mean that the actual cost of maintaining the same house on a mortgage is going to rise by, well, I think it's risen by 122% in the last 8 years. That's significant for the same house. And let me explain what that issue is. When mortgage rates are low, like they were up until a year ago, people buy houses. But when you buy houses, we have a saying in finance, you don't really buy the house you need. You buy the house the payment will afford. So in the 25-year mortgage at 0.25% with a $100,000 down payment, for instance, is going to equal a bigger house than if you have the mortgage payment around 4.75+%, which is what we've done to Canadians here. We've added 4.5 points of interest to their mortgages on hundreds of thousands of dollars to the average Canadian. We have actually picked their pocket here, a bait and switch, if you will, as far as what the house they can buy. The end result for many Canadians is going to be they're going to have to walk away from their houses, because the equity in their house is not going to equal what it was when they bought the house. They are losing value in their houses because of this government. And there's not enough houses in this country anyways. We've got to get this building again. We've got to make sure we get back to balance. And we've got to make sure that we serve Canadians to make sure they have the ability to build a life in Canada going forward. So if we're going through all this, the price we talk about Canadians, 107% of Canadians, pardon me, the GDP of Canada, I'll back up here a second if you'll allow me, Mr. Speaker. Canada's GDP is $2.3 trillion at this point in time. The mortgage debt of Canadians equals 107% of that, so it's over $2.3 trillion is consumer debt. About 75% of that mortgage debt. I hope to correct myself there for my colleagues. And this is something, number one, it's the most indebted ratio in the G7. So we are more exposed to a downturn in the economy than any other economy in the world at this point in time. It's something that's on the cusp of danger, but we call it moral hazard. The government hasn't faced the fact that actually in supposedly good times, you're supposed to balance your budget, you're supposed to pay back some of your debt, you're supposed to bring down interest rates so people can actually get the economy going in. But no, they continue to spend more money, ramp up the cost of everything, and make sure that Canadians are bearing it on their backs. And the backs they're going to bear it on the most on is mortgage rates. Mortgage rates are going to push so many Canadians out of their homes as they rise and they have to refinance here. That is a great tragedy we're visiting upon Canadians without these balanced budgets. So my party's actually been pushing this government for a long time. Show us a plan where you get back to balance, because every budget you've shown us so far is, well, you know, we're going to continue to spend more and more. What was a $10 billion temporary budget deficit in 2016 has turned into hundreds of billions of dollars per year, as another 40+ billion this year, and more going down the road, to say nothing of the debt service charge. It's doubled in the last 2 years. So we're up to $44 billion we're going to have to pay as interest. All of these are inflation. All of these are contributing to inflation. We've got to get back on track. Can I please tell the government to bring us a plan so Canadians can see they will actually get back on track? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.